Welcome. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale, and you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. We often focus solely on one's success and not what it takes to get there. The hard work, the patience, the tenacity, the trying different things, falling down yet always getting back up again. Well, on this episode, we're going to be talking about one man's journey to success, the various twists and turns along the way, why your voice matters, and much more. Our guest is a man of the world. He was born in Bahrain, grew up in India, and has made Australia his home for over 20 years. He has an MBA in psychology and leadership, a master's in software engineering, a bachelor of computer science and engineering, as well as a diploma in financial services. He's a serial entrepreneur, chef, author, international and TEDX speaker, marketer, founder of the world's first audio marketing agency, founder of We Are Podcast, the first podcasting conference in the Southern Hemisphere, and a brilliant podcast host who's interviewed over 1,200 guests and has been downloaded and listened to more than 5 million times in 133 countries. He's also involved in a number of causes and is an advisory board member of freetoshine.org, an organization that prevents children from being sex trafficked. Please welcome the founder and chief energy officer of Amplify, the voice behind the Psychology of Entrepreneurship podcast, and a lifelong Liverpool fan, Ronsley Vaz. Ronsley, it's so great to see you.
Jay, it's so good to be here. It's good to hear that from the voice. We label you the voice, and it's good to hear that. It's crazy to hear all that stuff mentioned because you don't really think about what's been done. Yeah, really good to have this chat. I actually rushed downstairs to make a cup of coffee because I was gonna have it an hour early. I'm like, nah, I'm going to wait and I'm going to have it while we're having this chat. So I'm excited to be here.
You're outstanding. Thank you so much for doing that. So, I love it when there are so many different twists and turns to someone's story. And, as I mentioned in the intro, so often we do focus on the success that someone has. And many times it's the external that we're looking at. And we don't spend time really digging deep and finding out the work that someone has done. And there's obviously a tremendous amount of work, and there's a great story to your success and where you are today. So what I'd like to do, if we could, is start with a thumbnail sketch, and let's go back a bit. And I'd be interested to find out your time in India. What led you to leaving and starting your own journey? Was it something that pulled you toward a purpose, or were you being pushed? So give us that thumbnail sketch, if you will.
Well, I'm so glad we're not talking about my entrepreneurial journey because I'm so sick of that story to talk about it again and again. This is super interesting question because I was always known as Richard's son. So this is the backstory to everything. I was always known as Richard's son. And my dad is well known in Goa among certain circles. And I just wanted to be me, I suppose. And I think some version, I don't even know, right now it seems like, it seems like a great story because you can connect the dots. Looking back, there's a great quote by Steve Jobs about that. But I knew that I was given these talents. I didn't know how to explain them. I didn't know how to. It's like I keep referring. I mean, I was brought up Catholic, so I read the whole Bible, so I refer to parts of the Bible, and one of the part of the Bible is this story about, you know, three different people getting these 5 coins and 3 coins and 1 coin, and one of them, the ones with 5 coins, like doubled it. The one with 3 coins just, you know, just could not do anything. We kept the 3 coins, and the one with the 1 coin buried that 1 coin, and someone stole it or something to that effect. I think I've added some bits there, my own version, but it's the idea is that I kind of always felt I was given 10 coins, and I was like, I've got to do something with these. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they are. And I think listening to all the stuff I've done, I think I've just been trying to find, you know, find what I can do. I've loved every single minute of every single bit that I did. There was no reason. It was not like, oh, I hated this thing, so I'm just going to do the next thing. There was not real, I can't remember moments like that through my life. It was always like, ooh, new opportunity. Like what can be done here? I suppose. So I think the backstory there is I felt like I needed to leave. I mean, I left I left home when I was 16. So I did my Bachelor of Engineering outside Goa, which is the state that my parents still live in India. And that was good for me to understand myself, to just, you know, not even understand myself yet, because I think there were too many constraints in India. If I just walked down the street, I was to get the wrong attention. It was just, I think it was my first language. I mean, I was brought up with English, so English. So it's weird because my accent has been a thing my whole life, because in India, I sound too English. And then when I came to Australia, it was like, oh, this guy's Indian. And then that was this whole identity piece where it was really interesting. So one of the things that happened was I worked in India, and I realized that I could not, like, it was just too confining. It was too, and I worked for an American company as well at the time, which I thought would be different. And then 8 months in, I'm like, nah, I gotta leave. I gotta find a way out. And the easiest way out was to do a higher, you know, another degree. So everyone told me that I was technically inclined. So I think I just sort of made up my mind that, you know, the Master of Software Engineering would be. I never thought of myself as entrepreneurial back then. So, yeah, and I got into the UK, into the US, and then a bunch of universities came to Australia, came to India, Australian universities, and picked one and came here. It's been the best decision ever.
Well, so I want to go back for a moment, because you've said you've provided some threads here that I want to try to tie together if we can. And one of those is being labeled Richard's son. Your dad is an entrepreneur, correct?
Yeah.
So as you look back before, before you left India, what did you learn from your father and mother? But what did you learn from your father's entrepreneurial journey that he had been on that you took with you, but you didn't necessarily realize it at the time, that learning was going to be meaningful for you at some point down the road? Is there anything that you can specifically point to?
Well, there are a few things that I've learned from my dad, and the different things I learned from my dad and different things I've learned from my mom. From my dad, for sure, like resilience. Like, I think that was the thing that I just saw him. He didn't really teach me that. He didn't really, like, give me any like great quotes, but he was stubborn. He used to be a sportsman. So he played for India. He represented India for volleyball and badminton, and he used to be the manager of the Indian badminton team. And in the world of badminton, India is like ranked in the top 10, has been for like in the world. So it's a deal. And so he's stubborn, and I think that's the best thing that I got from him. Like, I know people have this negative connotation. Even my mom says, "Oh, you call him stubborn," but I actually mean it as a compliment, because it's quite easy with information and different types of things to be swayed and all this. It's different. And I think that was the best thing I got from him, is the stubbornness and resilience to stick to like what he believed in. And from my mom, the best gift ever, really. I think when I got into a lot of trouble when I was growing up, lots of trouble. My mom and dad were called to school right from the age of, like, I remember from year one, right? The first memory of them being called to school was year one. So right through. To the point that year 8 and 9, I think it was, where I think there was this standing Saturday at 11 o'clock. We've had to be there because there would be something that Ronsley would have done in the week, or there was just this regular catch up. The problem was that I would get my grades, so it was like I wasn't the bad student, but I was just, not fitting in. Right, I did not fit in, and so my mom, whenever I used to get into trouble, and I would try to explain how it was not my fault, and she would always first make me responsible for being in the situation. Mm-hmm. I had to understand that before I even explained why I did not belong there or why it was not my thing. And Jay, I cannot tell you the kind of programming that has done for me, because what can you hit me with? Nothing. Like nothing. You can't. Like, there's nothing that you can hit me with. Like, I'm ready for anything. Like, anything at all. It's crazy. So yeah, I think that they've both given me some really, really good basis. And, I took the whole thing for granted. I didn't want to take their accolades in what they built, because that, I remember when I was growing up, my dad's first job was washing dishes down the street in Bahrain.
Okay.
So it was like I watched him build it, and it was great to watch, and I think he thought that I would just take over the business. I think that was always the expectation. And I'm like, no. And also, even when I was doing my when I got into engineering, my bachelor's degree, it was like, oh, he's going to do civil engineering because he would take over the construction company that built, and it will just be the next generation. And I was like, no, I think I have a thing for computers. And so, kudos to my parents for not forcing me and going, well, this is the family business and that kind of stuff. So thank you for reminding me that, because I have realized recently the power of my ancestors, and the power of the work that they've put in, the platforms that they've built to give the next generation better lives, and I only know 4 generations back. Like, I can only imagine what it was and how many generations it took to build that I can have this conversation with you, so I don't take any of that for granted. I just feel like I've been given these 10 coins, and what can I do with it? And what can I set whoever is next how can I set them up?
Yeah, I love that. You make a point. I believe you still do this, but you make a point on at the beginning of your podcast to show gratitude for those that came before you, that laid the groundwork. And I think that's remarkable. I think it's a great reminder that look, we don't do this on our own, right? We've been given so many remarkable opportunities. And the way that you acknowledge that, I think, is just beautiful.
Well, that's from my father. Like, I have to give him credit for that, because he's always said that it doesn't matter what you achieve, Ronsley, if you don't remember um, how many sacrifices they've gone to just allowing you to compete in that position, you know. He's always, I think that is probably the biggest thing that he actively tried to teach me. You know, the resilience part I learned by just looking at him, but what he actually tried to teach me was this, like, not necessarily, not like acknowledging different things, like, you know, someone picks up your garbage, it doesn't just go away. Like, you know, there's someone has you know, picked the carrots, like, it just hasn't come in a packet. Like, there's all these different things that are working for you to wake up this morning and be comfortable. um so yeah, that's all him.
Well, I can certainly see where having that type of gratitude and thankfulness impacts what you do today and the way that you serve, and allows you to think on a multitude of different levels. So I'm glad we had an opportunity at least to cover that. So I'd like to talk about the genesis of Amplify. And I may want to go back a bit, because there's some additional pieces that obviously lead up to this, but I want to make sure that we are talking about how Amplify came to be, what was the impetus behind it, and the problems that you're solving for your clients.
Yeah, Amplify, I think with time it gets better, the story gets better, because we understand more of the work we do, because we have more interactions, right? There's more reps. So the more you do, more repetitions you do of anything, the more you understand. So then the better you can explain it. And when I started, I mean, what happened was, our podcast ran for the first time in 2015 in November. And there was all this opportunity coming my way. And I was thinking to myself, well, there's got to be a way to allow the businesses that were unique, or that were like, that was seen at the time to be disruptive. If I could become the media company for them, that would be super interesting. So, that was the picture I had in mind. And I didn't have a name. I didn't put any money to it, didn't do any branding, didn't have a website. And I thought to myself, well, the goal was, if I can get 10 beta clients at 50% off, and we want to charge 5,000 Australian dollars a month as whatever the service was going to be. Still didn't figure it all out then. And if I could get someone in, not even 50%, it was way less. It was $2,000 a month. So $2,000 Australian I said, if I can get 10 clients at $2,000 a month, I will start spending money on branding or something like that. I thought to myself, was the first I would, because there was a lot of people that were a lot of, like, it was the confusion in my brain was, what comes first, the name, the website, or the service. And so I've learned in the recent part of my entrepreneurial journey is that first solve the problem and then you can create all the branding you want. So yeah, I mean, I had the idea in February. I think I started to like have conversations in March, and by May, I had 8 clients, and one of them called me up and said, "Hey, Ronsley, I would love to refer you to a friend of mine. Definitely needs what you're doing. What's the name of your business?" And I said, "Glenn, I'm going to call you back." And I Googled. I remember where I was because Rochelle and I had gone to Ballarat, and I Googled powerful verbs, and I didn't even get to B, so Amplify came up, and I was like, "That sounds great." I called Glenn back. I said, "It's called Amplify." Then I went to register the name, and obviously Amplify was taken, so it became Must Amplify. Spend money on branding, got that sorted, put the whole We Are podcast Amplify under one brand. And then September, the website went up. By November, we got like a whole bunch of awards. And by February the next year, we became $1 million company. So I think that the evolution of Amplify is not in the business, but it is years later, after doing all those helping all those people and all those clients and all those launching all these voices, myself included. I met a gentleman called Philip McKernan who pointed out to me that our greatest gift lies next to our deepest pain. And I realized that growing up, whenever I try to explain myself, I was always thought of as being questioning authority rather than just asking the question. And I was never really understood. I was always like, I feel like in India, I would walk down the street and I would be like, get the wrong attention in different situations, even during my bachelor's degree. So he said to me one day after a long conversation in Boulder, actually, at his home, before he moved to Ireland, he's like, "Isn't it funny, Ronsley, that you've built a whole business around people finding their voice?" I was like, "Wait, what?" And now I think I have more purpose around that business. Initially, it did not start with, I have this grand idea of voices being heard, which is, I think, the opposite of what's happening right now when people are like, "I just want to make an impact." But how? Like, just that is so shallow, because anyone can say that. Anyone can say, "I want to make an impact." It's easy to say, "I want to make an impact here," but how? How are you making that? Are you making that impact right now? And usually what people will say at that point is like, "Oh no, but." That tells you a lot about the actual impact that is happening. Does that make sense?
It does. Whenever I hear that about wanting to make an impact, I listen, but I want to ask better questions to try to uncover what exactly are you trying to do. So when we say impact, that can mean lots of different things. So what specifically are you trying to impact? Are you trying to encourage someone to take a specific action? Are you trying to, create inspiration somehow? But what is it? And I think just like in any business, when we're building a solid foundation, it's getting clarity around our purpose, why we're doing what we're doing, what is our mission, what are our core values. And if we can't articulate those things, they may not be completely defined yet, right? Because there's things that are constantly evolving. But we have to have something articulated that we can hold on to and that we can work from and that we can mold. And if we don't have that, then I think we need to go back to the drawing board and start to work with somebody that can help us better understand what we're trying to accomplish.
So yes and no. It depends on where someone's at in their journey. If they don't have enough reps, they don't have enough experience, it's hard for them to, even working with someone, it's hard to put those into words. Like how, if you don't know what it feels like to, walk 10 miles, there's no imagination of what running 5 would feel like. So it's just, that's the problem with impact, or those statements of it. That's the problem with going after the fluffy stuff first, is you can stay there forever. It feels good. It feels good to say. It gives you this nice warm feeling when you do a social post, but it doesn't add any value, because if you first start solving problems, then you start to understand how you can actually impact. So this is what comes to mind to me, Jay. I've never had to use this example before, but it comes to mind. It's like, when white people went to colonize other places, they went and said, this is how, this is uncivilized, our way is civilized, without finding out how things work. And now we're finding out, wait, these people have been doing this stuff for generations. And now we're finding the wisdom in it. Like when it's been actually, kicked out of culture. So I think the problem with impact is, or those fluffy statements, is that problems aren't being solved. It just looks good on social media, maybe, or to talk about, but what actual impact, what actual transformation is being made? Transformation needs to occur, right? What is the transformation that's happening?
That's an interesting conversation. And when you're working with your clients, someone comes to you and they're interested in engaging with Amplify, is this the type of conversation that you would have with them at the early stages?
All the time, even before they become a client. It's super important that we create case studies, so it is, just putting your voice out there is a very emotional journey. People put their voice out there, and actually Philip says it really well. It's not mine. This is all Philip. People want to put their voice out there and look good doing it. So they don't actually use their real voice, because they hear what good sounds like elsewhere, and they mimic that and go, I sound good, but they're not being themselves, right? And it's really important that when we take on a client, we see whether they're coachable, whether they're being nice. We've got a great team, Jay. Like, our team is my most precious. It's everything for me. Like, I get goosebumps even like mentioning them. And I need to make sure that any of our clients and my team can work together. And that is more important than anything else. Like, we're not going to take on a client if we can't see that, us having a good relationship. And doesn't mean that things go rosy. Like, it means that there's trust, and there are experts in certain situations. And in certain situations, those experts make certain calls. Like, when we get a lot of healers that actually come to us, a lot of introverts, a lot of founders. So we get to work with a variety of, actors, politicians, like different types of people. And different types of people, but they're all very similar in a very like very curious way. They're all looking to learn. You know, then they're all like curious in some way. So they're not like, oh, I want to start a podcast, or I want to do this because I want to show my expertise. None of them, none of our clients, not a single one starts a podcast to teach. You know, they start to learn as an internal driver, I suppose. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of like there's a lot of things in play before in fact, we just onboarded a new client this week. So, and and Scott has had, I don't know how many conversations, at least 7 conversations, before we said to him 3 weeks ago, yeah, we can take you on. This is the starting date. And yeah, we're excited to see how this is going to work, because it's really fascinating. What turns out afterwards is always amazing. Yeah.
So with the vetting process that you go through, which sounds like it's pretty extensive, a fair amount of conversations, really digging, asking good questions, making sure that there's alignment, getting to know one another. Can we build a trusting relationship? Is there a good fit? Have there been clients that you've let go because after you brought them on board, you realized over time that it wasn't a good fit, or maybe we can't serve them the way that they wanted or expected?
So yes, Jay, earlier on, that used to be the way we approached it. And that was me being young in the sense immature in my leadership. Now the way we approach it is, you know what, we are professional. We're going to work this out. So that's why we take so long to take someone on, is because we kind of go, we'll do whatever we can to make this work. We go out of our way. It hasn't happened since making that decision. So I'm trying to think of an actual case study since we made that decision to like work and go like, no, we're going to like not just cut them out, because that used to happen. We used to return money and go, thank you. But I feel like there was a lot of ego around that. And there was a lot of like, oh, I can tell people I fired my client, or, you know, it makes like a good story on stage or something, but I don't really, and I think I was not helping them, because here's the big realization I had actually. I had it in Spain, on a retreat, that I was not actually helping people, because what was happening was they would come with their raw ideas of what their voice they thought their voice sounded like, and I would just crush their dreams by having this grandiose idea of what I thought. So it was very like white person sort of, I'm telling you how to live your life because I know more, because I've done all these podcasts. And yeah, when it hit me. I was on a fasting retreat with one of my clients, actually, one of our clients who invited me to Mallorca. And I literally cried. I was just like, I remember that moment, because it was in the pursuit of what I wanted to do. I was doing the exact opposite, because I thought I knew better, because I thought that the world owed me more because I did all this stuff before, you know. So I've never actually spoken about that, so I'm glad it came up.
So speaking about leadership, you've learned some very valuable lessons over the years. How do you show up as a leader today? You talked about the importance and how meaningful your team is. How do you show up as a leader today versus the way that you led your team when you first started the business?
I don't think the intention has changed. Like my intention for my team was always that, um, if there was a victory, it was because of the team. If there was a loss, I carry it. That was always my thing. It was always a thing, but I didn't know how to execute it. Like, it sounds great. Like, everyone wants to have a nice, long-lasting marriage. But when you get into marriage, you realize that, living together, loving a person and living with a person are two totally different things. And then, sharing dreams together are totally two different things. And there's a whole gambit that comes with it. And you might have the best intentions, but, you learn. If you've been in any relationship, that, that you have the best intentions when you start, but it doesn't execute, not because you don't want to execute, but because you don't have the skills yet. And you got to learn and not be a jackass and say, you know what, I come here with this all knowing because this is the way to do it. So I think that has been really good to learn, really, like, even just saying it right now is like, there's so much power. And if I look at my team around me and their evolution from when they started and the people they are today, I've seen these people back then. They just didn't see that. And they learned, and it was my job to find ways that I could let them see it in a way that they didn't become defensive, so that they didn't shut down. So I got better at doing that, at being patient with the potential I see in someone, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a wonderful place to be and a wonderful experience to have. Along the way, did you have coaches, mentors that you worked with that helped you in growing as a leader?
Of course. I mean, I learned from everything, Jay. There's a friend of mine who started multiple businesses around here in Brisbane, and is a rock climber. And one of the things he said to me very earlier on when I opened the restaurant back in the days, so before Amplify, before We Are podcast, I had a restaurant. I was to be a chef. So this, and he said to me, Ronsley, even a stop sign should inspire you. And I took that literally. So I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought because I thought about Ali. Okay. What were we talking about?
So coaches, mentors along the way, and you mentioned the rock climber and that a stop sign should inspire you.
Yeah. So so many mentors, so many coaches, so many amazing people that gave me so much. So I remember lots of them. I'll mention a few of them because I think it's important to acknowledge them. I had a friend who we did a thing together, like a 40-week accelerator together. And he's a business coach. He used to help a lot of Aboriginal businesses in Australia. And this is before We Are podcast. And I was trying to, make the chef thing work because that was, I still had gone to a lot of figuring out business models, how to make businesses work. So before the podcast, and I literally one day I was so frustrated that I just went to John's house. John Stringer is his name, and it was Good Friday, and he spent the whole day with me with Post-it notes all over his wall, and the clarity he gave me that day is what everything is built on that you see now with like Amplify, like, and Amplify was not even a thing then, or if we are podcast was not even a thing then, you know, like that was so valuable. That one day was so valuable. I'll never take that for granted or never forget that. Like that, I had so many. Right now I have a business coach, Taki Moore, who is just phenomenal. What I learned from him the most is how to acknowledge other people and give them credit when it's their stuff that you've borrowed. And, you know, if a coach can teach you that, I find those coaches extremely valuable.
Love that. So let's talk about podcasting for a couple of minutes here. Unless someone has experienced creating a podcast, I would think, just from my own experience, that it would be difficult to understand the nuances, what's involved, how much time and effort and energy and mind share and everything that's required. So speak to the creation side for a moment and kind of walk us through, if you will, the different pieces and parts that Amplify provides to its clients, because it's remarkable when I hear all that you do, and just knowing the small amount that I do in my type of work, it's overwhelming, and it's amazing the type of value that you provide to your clients. So can you speak to that?
Thank you. I mean, and it's not me. I mean, right now, I mean, there was a point, I mean, before COVID and stuff, but there was a point where Amplify was like 30 people, almost 29 people. And at one point, I used to do all their jobs when we started, right? So when we started, I did everything, but they are the ones that evolved each of those things. I can't do what they do anymore. They're the experts in each of the areas, but to answer your specific question about the services we provide, the most important piece in a puzzle box is the picture on the front. So one of the things we provide is that first picture, because we have all the experience that we can help take someone's expertise to do that blueprint. Now, because we see so much, like, your imagination is only as good as your experience. Like if I say, Jay, imagine what a deserted island looked like. And you'd be like, yeah, I can imagine. I've never been to one. I've been to an island. I've been to a beach. I mean, I can imagine what a deserted island looked like. I've never been to one. But if I say, Jay, imagine what the 12th moon of Jupiter looks like. And you'd be like, wait, what? Honestly, because it's hard to imagine that because the experience, right?
Sure.
The same goes with anything you're building. That's why you go to an architect before you build a house. So one of the biggest things that we do that is better than anyone else's is that blueprint that we can offer people at the start, because they don't have the reps to figure out what that main picture looks like. So what people land up doing is they have all these puzzle pieces. Now, remember, they don't know that it's a picture. They don't know that it's supposed to be flat. So they have all these puzzle pieces and they're trying to lay them in this direction and that direction. And they go, but these look good together. Why isn't it working? It's because you don't know what the picture on the front looks like. So, but that's just the start. That's not even creating anything. That's just the start. And like that, the idea was at the start of when Amplify was created, and it's really crazy because the lady that did our branding, Julia, um, in the branding exercise, she asked me what Amplify looked like in 10 years from now. This was 2016, so 4 years ago.
Okay.
And a year ago, she emailed me and said, "Hey, Ronsley, I don't know whether you know this, but you've achieved all those things that we outlined in the brand document." And I went back to the brand document and I looked at it and I was like, how? How? I don't remember writing these down. I don't remember saying that this is what we wanted to do. So it was always about being the first class solution, like just the best, at what we do in each area. So we just try to evolve them, and over time. And and again, it's not me. It's not me at all. It's just the people that work at Amplify that, a lot of people come to Amplify thinking that they're getting me, but they realize that I'm not the most valuable piece, and the team is.
Well, it is a remarkable process and a remarkable team and business that you've built. And it can't be overstated the amount of work that's involved in not only creating the podcast, but then the marketing side and ensuring that your podcast is on the right platforms. And
so, sorry, I should explain that better. So you start with the blueprint. Jay, I should have answered that question more specifically. So we start with the blueprint. When we start with the blueprint, we take that blueprint and we do the branding. Then it's all about the voice, the feel, how does someone feel when they listen to the voice, and how do you audio brand based on the strategy blueprint that we've created. Then we go and create the product ecosystem, which is what does the ecosystem look like so that we don't have to scale effort, no workload, less effort. How do you scale what has to be created before we even launch audio? Then we launch the audio, and launching audio is all about the engagement. So every business, the best piece that they can keep together is their audience, keep them engaged for as long as possible. And that can be done through a podcast. So how can you create the most engaging piece of content then? Because then you figured out the blueprint, you figured out the branding, you figured out the products, and now you know, all right, well, now how can I keep people engaged? Because they're going to be different types of people. They're going to be people that you can help straight away. Then they're going to be people that you can help over time. And you got to be patient, right? And there will be times that the ones that come after years are the most satisfying ones, because you know how much effort has gone into them understanding your concept, so they finally become a client and want the transformation that you're trying to provide. So then after we launch audio, then we do three things. We attach a sales machine, and that is three things. The three things are: we intensify messaging through repurposing. We put each of the audio episodes goes on at least 9 or 11 platforms, and we repurpose it every week. So there's a lot of content that goes out from someone doing one, because once you know everything, right, the founder just does 1 hour of work a week and their whole marketing is sorted, right? So that is first step. Second step is we encourage that into a sales, fostering engagement conversation. How can you take all this stuff that we're doing into a place that converts into money? Okay. Whether it looks sponsors or clients or brand or whatever that looks like, speaking gigs, getting elected. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. And then finally, the last step is basically the measurement. What parts do we need to improve? What parts are falling off? What parts do we measure, and on what frequency? So we return on investment. So there's a whole process to it. I wrote a book about it. It's called Amplify. It's all outlined in that. So we just follow that, and it works. It works all the time.
Amazing. So you had mentioned this earlier on, and it was ego. And I have certainly throughout my career dealt with ego, both hurting me as well as helping me to a degree. What has been the impact of ego throughout your career?
Well, I think the stubbornness comes from the ego, right? In if we had to like try to break it down into words, and I think that's the hard part with the emotional journey is we try to make it into words, and it's not has got nothing to do with the words. It's about the feeling, and the longer we can stay with the feeling, the better we can understand it. And it's not about for us to understand the feeling to explain it to someone else, but for us to just understand why we feel certain things. So the ego, like you said, and it's a really good point, Jay, is extremely helpful. And I think it's always come to my like aid, because when I started to think about this particular question, I remember all the times that someone, even mentors, even people I looked up to, saying, "Are you sure this is like? Have you thought this through, Ronsley?" And I don't know whether I think it definitely stubbornness, because like I would go to them thinking that I'm going to get confirmation, but they would go, I don't know whether, this is too big, or like, how are you going to do this? And to be honest, I didn't know. So I don't know where I got the confidence from, or even the false sense of confidence. Um, I don't know whether I was even confident, but in the moment when I would say, this is what I want to do, like I would not have these doubts, which was really crazy. So, people have said to me, like, really, like, We Are podcast would have never happened because 3 people that I really looked up to said, and who did events, by the way, who I've been to their events, I've spoken at their events, I spoke to them because they're business partners, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And like, man, events, Ronsley, you're not going to make money with events. You're going to lose money, and what I did was I asked Glenn, Dan, and Mike, and I was like, so what is not going to work? And made a list of all the things that they said. I was on an hour call with each one of them, and I just found contingencies for each one of them. And We Are podcast now, 6 years on. Yeah.
Incredible. So I want to talk about helping people tell their extraordinary stories. And you recently hosted an event, and you mentioned Philip McKernan a few minutes ago, and you recently hosted an event with him that I was fortunate enough to be able to participate in, and that was called One Last Podcast. And Philip wrote the book and created the live speaking platform, One Last Talk. So, Ronsley, what is the message of your One Last Podcast? And share with us why you created that event and how did it change you?
Well, Philip and I are both. Philip, it's really weird because Philip doesn't partner with people. This is really interesting. And I think he mentioned that as well. If I remember correctly, he mentioned that through the series. So we still don't. We didn't know what the end was. Like, we don't know whether we would do a coaching or we would help people, or we wanted to see whether we could serve, or whether there was any value in someone thinking about their one last podcast. So we did a 3-part series and just held space for people. And it was really interesting. It was only to our audiences. So it was not like we didn't market it outside our audiences. We didn't do any promos. We just, our audiences just got it for free, really. And the idea really is because that there's so much pressure to create the next big thing that we don't create at all. And the best way to fix that is mortality, right? It's like, if you're, I don't think we think of our mortality. I think we avoid it, and we don't think of the fact that, I'm going to stop half sentence there and say this. I've recently had the pleasure of interviewing a couple of people on death row. I've got 2 more interviews coming up. And it has been one of the most fascinating. It's been like 1,200 interviews later. You get it's like, oh, Ronsley, because you've done all those reps now, interviewed 4 gentlemen who are on death row. And, the thing that I realized is that we're all on death row. We can die tomorrow. Like, we don't realize that we can die tomorrow, and that there's so many things not said, not done, because we think and we take for granted that we're going to wake up tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So, one last podcast was basically to open that conversation. It was nothing. There was no intention other than, let's see what comes from this space. Maybe it's not, no one's ready yet to think about that, but considering what happened in 2020, I think all those conversations were really well received. So it was fascinating to do that. The first one I did, so there was 3 series, right? So I consider Philip to be my mentor. And after the first series, he sent me a message saying, I felt this was all a Philip McKernan show, and you didn't why wouldn't you say anything? So that was really fascinating, because I was like, I don't even know what to contribute to this, because, it's Philip. And then getting all the messages from people after the second, third one was really interesting, because I still don't know what I said or did. I'm trying to remember. But after the second one in particular, I got a few messages from different platforms from people who attended that, saying that was really good. So yeah, I think I have more confidence in myself every time I hang out with Philip.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you and I haven't known each other very long, and you are very open and very authentic and transparent during those conversations. And one of the things that I've noticed in watching your work and seeing you at We Are Podcast and then that event as well is that you are able to open your heart and speak from a place of what seems like peace. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but that's the sense that I receive when I listen to you and when I watch the emotion in your body language. And that's, talk about being able to find your voice. And I know you talk about the reps and thousands of interviews, and that is clearly important. But people can do a lot of reps and not necessarily see the results that you've seen. And to be able to show up the way that you do and to give from a place of, wow, just truth and honesty and caring, that is quite remarkable. And those are the kind of individuals that you want to be around. That attracts, right? That's a light that you want to be near and that you want to learn from. So that's what I got from listening to you and engaging with you. But I am going to go back because I want to know from you, because I went through that process and really tried to do some deep questioning of myself. What is your one last podcast?
I put it out every week. I put out a one last podcast every week. It's called The Psychology of Entrepreneurship. And we put our heart into it. It is our team rep. It is our rep of the whole team that puts everything into that volume. So over 40 hours easily of work goes every week into the volume of the psychology of entrepreneurship. From the prep to the invitation to my prep to the conversation, the long form conversation I have with the guest, to then content taking that, audio taking that, cleaning that up, and content breaking it down into highlights, which comes back to me. Then research is done around the subject, which then I script over and narrate, and they add current events and context and perspective. Then they add sound design, and then they publish that, and then they do the repurposing of that whole episode. It is every week we cover the psychology of our decisions, and we give voices to people that haven't been heard, voices that are not spoken about, as well as voices that you hear often, but not in the way they show up here. It's very different. I do it every week.
Wonderful. It's an outstanding show.
Thank you.
You also, Ronsley, give voices to those that aren't often heard or need to be heard through causes that you participate in. Share with us some of the causes that you are involved in and why you have chosen those particular causes and how that has changed your outlook on life.
I feel like I just care about one cause, really. If it's a philanthropic cause, that especially the one that needs to be heard more than anything else is the one that we don't talk about often, is that children all over the planet are being trafficked for sex. And it's a $41 billion a year industry, which means $41 billion are being exchanged every year for children being trafficked for sex. Children. So it's really important to keep that in perspective. Happens all over the world, happens in first world countries more than you think. And the reason it is so important for me to talk about it or give that a voice is that it's hard to talk about. Even now, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't. It's hard to even imagine that happening to anyone we know, leave alone some of our loved ones, right? And we don't have perspective. We don't know what happens. We live in a world that has hunger and obesity on the same fucking planet. There's both, like, hunger and obesity on this planet. You think we'd solve it by now. Every We Are podcast every We Are podcast, every Amplify client, every book that is sold, everything that we touch, every member we take on at We Are Members, every person that attends the We Are podcast, every speaker that attends We Are podcast makes an impact. They don't know it, but we contribute and we make the impact towards saving girls that have been sex trafficked. And we give them different things, from the ability to even make a phone call to their village, to clothes after they've been saved, to education so that they can help others, to safe villages so they don't know, they can't be found. And every single person that's involved in anything we do makes an impact towards ending sex trafficking.
Well, thank you for sharing that difficult conversation, but a conversation that needs to be had and needs to be had more often, so that industry can continue to shrink and eventually be eradicated. So, Ronsley, what message would you like to leave our audience with?
Well, I get asked this question a lot. I know you didn't ask me the question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. The question I get asked a lot is, "What's your favorite quote, Ronsley?" My favorite quote is by a gentleman called Paul Dunn, who I think reused the quote from someone else. And the quote is, "Ronsley, the goal is not as important as the person you become in the pursuit of that goal." That's it.
Beautiful quote. So before I ask my final question to you, where should we go to connect?
Psychology of Entrepreneurship is probably the best place. It's a show about the psychology of our decisions. We do another show called Should I Start a Podcast? And that's a show for podcasters or wannabe podcasters. So, but Psychology of Entrepreneurship is our favorite child.
Wonderful. Well, we will certainly link to that in the show notes. And here's my final question to you. So, what are 1 to 2 questions that you're asking yourself in order to take your life and your business to even greater heights?
I have one that's right here on a piece of paper, right in front of me. And it says, "What questions bring out the best in people?" So that's the question for me. And like that, I get inspiration all the time. And you can't see my workspace, but there's like there's sheets of paper so I can scribble, there's post-it notes. I don't try to remember everything, but I feel like when the universe needs me to have certain information, it always comes. It's really fascinating. Like I feel like I'm the luckiest person on the planet because people really give me stuff. Jay, I'm not even joking. Like I get given things. Like the craziest thing is, like, we stopped at a set of lights and someone came up to us and said, "I've got these 3, these are my last 3 packed lunches from the restaurant. We're shutting down. Would you like it?" We walk it doesn't matter where on the planet, right? In New Zealand, we were watching something and this lady comes up to me and is like, "Hey, I have some sandwiches that I made this morning. Would you like to share one with me?" And Rochelle, my wife, just looks at me, and like, it happens all the time. I obviously give food stories because I remember them, but I feel the universe comes and just gives me the right information. So if I can have that in front of me, it's all I need for what is to come next. And I just trust that, it's not me really. It's just God or the universe or whoever you want to call it, like that's working through all of us, that you know um, is making the world a better place. I hope.
Well, beautifully said. And I would concur with you in regards to the universe, but clearly you receive because of what you put out. And keep doing that. And I want to thank you so much for giving of yourself today, giving of your heart, and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and telling us a bit about your story. There's many, many more areas that we could go into, but this is a great starting point. And there's clearly much more that's going to be coming out of you. And I'm so excited to see where that you continue to develop. And I am appreciative of this opportunity. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay. It's really good to be here. Really good to have this conversation, and really good to reminisce on some of the stuff that I've done through life. So cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching and listening. I would love to hear your takeaways and feedback on this episode. So would you please subscribe and leave a comment? And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how J-Shear Business Consulting can build a solid foundation for your service-based business, visit jshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.